let's talk about some personal experiences in witchcraft. I honestly have no idea how I'm going to start this video because I'm going to be sharing with you some of my personal experiences that led me down to some of my paths in my practice. Specifically, what I'm going to be talking about today is what you might have heard me refer to in some of my other videos as my nightmare house, and how that started me down the path to Oneiric magic, or otherwise known as dream magic. Everyone's experience with dream magic is going to be a little bit different because it goes by the individual, and each person is different. Everybody dreams different. Everyone does magic a little bit differently. Each person uses dream magic for different things. There's a lot that goes into this story, so I don't even know where to begin. I'm going to basically take off from one part of where I talked about where I started my witchcraft journey, which was when I was in a temp house, and that house that was a haunted house, or at least to myself and my mother, it was a haunted house, and some of the tenants that lived there too. So I guess that's as good of a place as any to start, I guess. But the majority of you guys, if you see my other videos, you already kind of know my backstory, which makes me sound like important, but I mean like a back. I don't mean like that, but if you get confused by anything, if I accidentally skip over anything, that other video should fill in the gaps. All right, let's just go. So the majority of you guys know what started me on the path to witchcraft was when I was homeless as a little girl, because all my time was spent in libraries. I had mentioned in that video that in between shelters and living outside and on the streets or staying with family members, my mom and I would sometimes be able to get into temp houses. So temp houses, for anyone, again, who's not familiar with the term, I'm not sure if that term has changed or if it's called different things in different places. I am located in New England, but a temp house was, and all the ones I stayed in were always apartment buildings that were converted to be able to house as many people as possible. All the ones that we stayed in were for families, and you were only allowed to stay there for a temporary amount of time. If you couldn't get into shelters, if it was an emergency situation, some of them were just for a night, some of them were for 2 years, some of them were for like 3 months, some for like a week. They always vary, and I've been in a lot of them. But the very first one that I ever stayed at is the one that has stuck with me through my adult years. And that is the one that is called my nightmare house. Now, I'm going to fill in the gaps with other things too, because there could be logical, mundane reasons for all this stuff that had happened. And because I was already in my witchcraft journey, my witchcraft practice, I could have just put a magical explanation for things instead of a logical one. So I am going to leave all avenues open for this, and I am open for interpretation because I'm inside the scenario and I'm inside the box, and sometimes we can't see everything from other people's perspective because we're so blinded by our own. And I don't want to be someone who will never listen to another person because I'm so blinded by my perspective. I do not want to be that person. So I'm open to anything that you guys want to throw at me, because otherwise I'm never going to learn and I'm never going to grow. But this temp house, I don't want to give like too much information because I'm going to jump ahead for a little bit. I do know personally the people who live there now who are also having the same experiences there that did not know that I was having those experiences too. So it's already a weird thing. So I don't want to give too many details. It is all personal information. So please excuse if I'm being cryptic. It's just for privacy reasons. But I'll give you everything else around that. This temp house that my mom and I stayed in, we were in the top floor of this temp house. When my mom and I were going into this temp house in the very late 90s, early 2000s, I think we had maybe like a trash bag of clothes between the two of us. So this temp house came with everything. They had furniture. They had a big tube TV with like the VCR. So you could just, if you had a VHS or if you rented one, you could just pop one in. There were beds in there. Definitely not clean beds, no sheets or anything else like that. But they had some couch pillows that you could use as like a regular pillow. One of the bedrooms, the one that my mom chose, had a bureau. Mine did not. So they did have some furniture for us. But when you walked into this house, first of all, the front door did not lock. It had like all this tape over it so the door couldn't lock or couldn't fully shut all the way. Because back then, again, I don't know if this has changed, but they couldn't give everybody keys. You could have a key to your apartment door, but for like the front door, just in case anyone was to come back or try to come back and squat, they didn't want to make new keys for everybody all the time. So that already kind of like made my mom and I uncomfortable because we were trying to feel safer being inside an actual house to live and sleep and figure things out. So again, maybe fear of that, even though I stayed in worse ones and I've been outside, I don't know. I also do want to put in this moment as a reminder, if you haven't seen the other video, or if you have, my mom was diagnosed with schizophrenia as well. And sometimes she was not able to get to medication. Some people can live normal lives with or without medication with, their schizophrenia. My mother was not one of them. My mother needed her medication, and sometimes she could not get to it. So that is something that I also thought maybe played a factor into this, but we'll get there when we get there. Just for full transparency. And again, schizophrenia is not like how most people think. I think most people are aware of it now. Everyone always thinks it's like a split personality disorder, and it's not like that at all. Definitely not like that at all. There can be other factors to some people, but 9 out of 10 times it's just either auditory or visionary hallucinations. As long as they know what they're staring at is not real, it won't trigger a further episode. So in my experiences with schizophrenia, you never want to enable any type of hallucinations or any type of episode. I'm getting ranty and rambly again because it's all like vulnerable stuff. Okay, so we were on the top floor of this temp house. When you were coming up the stairs, if you're coming up the stairs this way, on the left-hand side, there was this window that opened out into the hallway. And it was about maybe 3 feet off the ground because, again, it's stairs. But the window was level, but it just opened up into the hallway with the stairs. And then across from that window was another window that led outside. And there was a street light that was right in front of that window. And there was a tree on the other side. So sometimes you could see the tree, other times you can't, depending on, if the wind was blowing a little bit more, it might get a branch or something in the way of that window. As soon as I saw the window, when the social worker was taking us upstairs, I got so freaked out. Could be a little kid. Window doesn't make sense anywhere. I just didn't like the feeling that I got from that window. Every single room had the slanted ceilings. And the living room seemed very squished in and very long. Like it should have went out more, but it went more this way. And they were 2 bookshelves, perfectly square bookshelves built into each corner of the living room in that smaller section of the living room. That whole setup, even then, made no sense, but it makes sense to what we found out later on. I didn't like it. I wanted to go back outside. So then right off of there was a bedroom. So you walk in and it's just all slanted ceilings, and then you turn and all you see is the window. And all it was keeping the window shut, and not even fully shut, was those little latch hooks, the ones that are the latch and eye, that's just doop. So the whole thing would wobble. So anyone could have just undid that latch. I did not like that room. I was freaked out about it. As I turned to leave, there's a closet, and the closet door was kind of open. And walking past it, I noticed that there was light moving through the closet. So the outside door that was open had a hole drilled through the middle of it. So there was a peephole in the closet. So then when I moved the door, when my mom and the social worker went out, because right out there was the kitchen, when I moved the door, I looked into the closet. And in between, the closet wall in the back, there was another peephole. So someone could be sitting in the closet and staring out into the room, the room that had the bed in it, the bedroom. And then there was a hole on the other side. I don't like this. I don't like this. Someone sitting in the closet being able to watch you. That's the stuff of freaking nightmares. That's just a peephole in a closet in a bedroom. Should not exist. So we went out to the kitchen. The kitchen felt a little bit better, but the kitchen again ended in a weird spot in comparison to the living room and what the house looked like on the outside. And then right off to the side of the kitchen was the bathroom, and it was kind of a long bathroom. It had a light in there. And then next door to my room, on the other side of the kitchen, was the other bedroom, which was a bigger bedroom. And when we went in there, that door also had a peephole in it, but there was stuff in front of it. There was a bag of something. And there was I remember this triangle. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I just remember it was a triangle thing blocking it, a furniture thing, or if it was a shelf. I don't know. I just remember just staring at the peephole and realizing that there was another peephole in there. So all of our closets were linked. So if anyone was sitting in anyone's closet, they could either look out through my door into my bedroom, or if that stuff wasn't in front of the other door, they could just look out the other door and into the other bedroom. Freaky. It was really, really freaky. That bedroom out there had a window that went outside and looked to the backyard and looked to a tree, and there was like fields back there and woods. My mom liked that bedroom. The other bedroom scared her. So guess who got the scary bedroom? I did. I got the scary bedroom. And the unsafe one, may I add, and Mom got the safe one on the happy side of the house. There was a back door throughout the kitchen. So right outside the kitchen, there was like this little landing, and then there was another window that went outside, and then it just had like spirals, and then it went down to the basement. Now, this is the house that I am terrified of basements because, and it wasn't anything to do with anything that was like weird or haunting that was happening there. It had to do with like a person. So, but at first, when they showed us the basement, there was a washer and a dryer. So we were all excited. We were like, oh, we get to wash our clothes. But the whole entire basement just had like a weird vibe. Like I was not scared of basements at all in the beginning of this. I was not scared of basements. I liked creepy things, but there's a difference to like, you know, creepy and spooky things and unsafe things. I think you guys know what I mean with the difference between like scary and scary. Hopefully you guys know what I mean. But when we went into the basement, it was all dirt floor, and it was like old foundation that was all crumbly. Like the house had the horsehair plaster. I'm not sure if that's common anywhere else, but it was like the plaster where they mixed in the horsehair, and the top of the walls in the hallway had openings so you could just like hang like metal if you were to hang pictures. I don't know, it was weird, but the rest of the apartment was fine. But anyway, in the basement, when you come down, the basement stairs had the opening underneath the stairs, which, I don't know. Now that I think about it, like so many things could have gone wrong. Thankfully, those other things, like a big thing did go wrong, but so much other stuff could have happened. Underneath those stairs, there was like someone dug a hole in the ground to like hide underneath the stairs, and there was just like, you know, the foundation hole in the stairs, so it was like a secret little room. And then the back door to the basement that went to like the bulkhead had a big door on it, like a very big square door, not like a rectangle door. It was a very big square door with like a whole bunch of slide locks that were on it. Then there was a doggy door built into that, and that had like 3 or maybe 4 other locks on that too. There were so many locks on this basement door, even on the doggy door. It made no sense. Like there's like so much of this house doesn't make sense. But right off to the side of that was this room, and oh my, I hate this. This is the room where everything happened. There was no light in the room. So she was telling us, like when she was giving us the tour, she was like, this room does not have a light. Be careful if you flip the switch. So she flipped the switch, and you just hear a whirring sound. Now again, a whole bunch of locks on the outside of the door. So you could lock the door from the outside, but you can't do anything on the inside because it's all like those bolt locks. Like one was like you know, the bolt lock that goes like, but it goes like in the thing, and then the other ones were like the slidey locks. And then off to the side in that room was this metal grate confession looking window that you would like see in a confession booth. But anyway, when she hit the light switch, you just hear like this whirring sound. And, you know, we were just kind of like, what? And you could kind of see the light from like the light bulb. On it was the most MacGyvered 2x4 like extending arm with all these hinges on it, like all mismatched wood, with a table saw attached at the end of it, and it went to the middle of the room. There was no light whatsoever. It was like you know, in a laundromat, especially like in the 90s, they had like a double layer for you to fold your clothes. Now I think they're just regular tables, but it was like a double layered like place to fold your laundry. But in the middle of that was a freaking table saw that came out that was attached to that with no light switch. No light switch. The only window was that confession booth looking freaking window off to the side in the corner. I'm sorry, I don't like this room, and we'll get to what happened in this room in a little bit. But she let us know that like there's no light switch in here. Don't play in this room. It's not a play room. It's a tool room or like a work room or like something along those lines. But on the outside, so you come out of that room, There's like a weird hallway by the edge of that room, because that room was built into the basement with just particle board wood just nailed together just to make a freaking room out of it. And then the other side had chicken wire storage for everybody, so it made like this awkward hallway, and then the dryer was at the end of that. Then on the other side of like all the chicken wire storage, the last one was our storage. Obviously we didn't have anything to put in there, but if we were to get anything, that was the storage that we could use. Since we were the last one, we were at the end of the basement, and there was, I don't know if it was like an oil tank. I just remember like this big metal thing, and since like I was a kid, I don't know it, and I could kind of picture it in my head. In my head, I picture it as like an oil tank, but so I don't know if this is part of an oil tank. Underneath where all the dirt was, there was like a wooden frame that was like dug in and built into the ground, and then there was a piece of like wood, like particle board wood, or like the plywood, and it was off to the side, and there were nails hammered up from like underneath where the wood was, but then hammered off to the side, like someone had gone underground and hammered it up, and it was built into the ground. So it was like another room was built into the basement. So I've never had oil, so I don't know if that's something to do with the oil. Like I don't know. I've always had gas. Like as an adult, all I've had is gas. I never had to work with oil, so I don't know if there has to be something underneath an oil. I don't know. So I'm leaving that up. It just didn't make a lot of sense to me at all. Again, I'm going through these memories as a kid, so I'm trying to remember it as accurately as I can. But again, I'm remembering it from my kid point of view. So, and that's like the sum up of what the house looked like. It is a normal apartment complex. It is no longer a temp house. So let's get into what happened at the nightmare house, right? First, few nights, nothing really happened. I didn't like the apartment. I didn't like it at all. I felt very uncomfortable, but there was friends in the neighborhood and I got to hang out with them. So that made me feel pretty cool. At night, I would be freaked out, when I had to be in the house. But other than that, I wasn't really thinking of the house, so I wasn't really freaked out by it. I remember I started getting freaked out by my window more and more. I remember before everything started happening, so we didn't stay there for very long. Before everything started happening, I just remember looking at the window, and there was this really flimsy yellow curtain that had flowers on it, and it would just be so flimsy, because if the front door opened, because again, remember, front door can't lock, it was all just tape pushed in, so with the doorknob, that was a weird thing to do, the doorknob latch, where you turn the knob and it comes undone, that was just taped, so there was nothing ever to catch the door. So if the front door opened or slammed from the wind, my windows, since they didn't close all the way, they would just be and rattle and make all these noises. So that could play a factor in things too, of me being freaked out and looking out the window for things. And I just remember staring and staring and staring at the window, but too afraid to take my eyes off of it. I'd be holding my breath. I wasn't scared of a person. I just didn't want them to know that I was there. I don't know how to describe it. I wasn't afraid of a person, breaking in through my window or anything like that. I just remember when I was holding the blankets and I just wouldn't move. I would just be off to the side with the blanket like this, and I would just be staring at the window like this. And I just remember thinking they can't know I'm here. They can't know I'm here. But I can't remember exactly if I already had a feeling of what was to come, because it was always they, not him, her, it. It was always they, which is interesting too. So now let's get into the stuff that happened. The first thing that I really remember happening is, since this was a temp house for people with families, it was only people who had children that were allowed to live there. They were all single moms for each floor. There was a single mom with a boyfriend, which we'll get to in a second, that had a girl named, I don't want to say her real name just in case, so I'm just going to call her Rebecca. And then on the second floor, there was a family with two boys who I didn't know, but they ended up moving out almost immediately after, and then another family moved in, and it took a little bit for me to become friends, and there was 3 kids that lived there. So we were homeless for about maybe 2 years at this point, I think maybe a year and a half. But this was the first temp house that we had stayed at, and my dad was coming to pick me up for to spend like the night and the weekend at his house, because like I said, there was all stuff going on like legally behind the scenes for everything, because I did not want to leave my mom alone. Big whole side story, but regardless, I'm not getting into that personal side. I'm just here to tell what happened in this house. So Rebecca from the first floor and I were playing upstairs in my house. And the bookshelves in the living room, like I said, they were like square, and they were set off to each corner of the house. And of the living room. And the whole living room was just cut off. It was very tiny. It was a very tiny, weird shaped living room that did not make sense. And as we're like jumping on the couch, either her or I hit the bookshelf. And when you hit the bookshelf, we didn't have anything on it, because we didn't have any decorations or anything to put into it. But when we hit the bookshelf, it made like a weird hollow like noise. And I remember afterwards, whoever one of us hit it, I was like, oh my gosh, it's hollow. So we started knocking on it. And then we started joking around, be like, what if it's a secret passage? What if it's a secret door? You know, the cliche door behind the bookcase kind of deal. But as we started like looking around the bookcases, it looked like it was just inserted into the wall. Like it wasn't sealed into the wall. There was no wood glue. There was no nails. There was nothing. It was just placed and looked like it was pushed into the wall. So her and I had the brilliant idea of, let's see if it comes out, right? So we're grabbing the edges, and we grabbed it by the shelves, because the shelves were all solid. It was all part of it. Like the shelves weren't resting on anything. It was built into it. So we're wiggling it, and the whole thing is starting to come out. I'm pulling it towards me from like towards like where my bedroom is and stuff like that. So where my mom's bedroom, it's opening towards that way in the kitchen. And she's on that side, like pushing it towards me to help open it. So she's able to see it first. And she's like, oh, there's stuff coming out. There's stuff coming out. There's stuff behind here. There's dust. So I'm getting all excited. We're wiggling. So then my mom comes out of her bedroom, and she's like, what are you guys doing? Oh my God, you guys are destroying the house, you know, like freaking out. And I'm just like, no, it's a secret room. It's a secret room. And like Rebecca, she's like, it's a secret room. It's a secret room. But as we wiggle it, the whole thing just finally goes like, makes a squeaking noise. And then Rebecca and my mom that are facing it, they go kind of quiet. And my mom kind of like backs up and kind of gets freaked out. And then Rebecca is just staring at it. So then I'm like, what is it? What is it? So I'm like going around and I look. So like I mentioned, everything was like horsehair plaster, like crumbly plaster. But there was like this cement landing that matches that pile of cement that was mixed in with like the dirt in the basement where like that underground room looking thing was. And it was like a platform. And there was like bits of the plaster that was crumbling, and we just hear something like bouncing, like going like falling, but not like a straight shot falling. So then we're staring at it, and my mom's like, are those stairs? Is that stairs? We're looking and we're trying to get close. We didn't have a flashlight, and you could kind of see like these stairs very, very tightly just kind of going off to the side, but like the stairs, like they were wide. It took up what would be the rest of the house, but it looked like they were stairs that went off to the side and then down out of sight. So we're all just kind of staring at it like there really is a secret like room and staircase behind a bookshelf. Like finding it, and like the excitement that you would think we're finding it, it just kind of like went away when you were staring at it, because it's like cool in theory, but when you're actually like finding one and seeing one, it's just kind of like, is this a whole other house and like where you're living? It's just weird. It's weird. It was like old hot air and just like so much dust, and we were just staring at it. More pieces would like crumble a little bit, and it felt like we were staring at it for like ever, trying to figure out what to do. Then we just hear something like start scrambling, like up, sounding like coming up the stairs, like something started running up the stairs. So like this, I don't think was paranormal. Like this, I don't think was paranormal at all. I'm like 99.99% sure it was an animal. But something comes running up the stairs as we're all staring at it. So my mom starts screaming, and she's like, put it back, put it back, put it back. And she's like starting to like hide behind the wall. So then me and Rebecca start like trying to push it in, and we can't get it like all the way fully in, and we're trying to lift it. So then after we lift it and we get it in, it's still like coming out, and whatever it is just starts thunking behind the door and like scratching and like, you know, like at the door. So we're all freaking out. We're all screaming and all this stuff. And like my dad's supposed to be there later on that day, and my mom's trying to page him. That's a beeper, in case if I have a younger audience. Shows how old I am, trying to page somebody with a beeper. But she's trying to like page him and stuff like that, because he always had like a big truck. He always had like a lot of tools. But like me and Rebecca are like up against the bookshelf trying to like hold it, thinking that like it was probably maybe like a squirrel, maybe a raccoon, maybe a skunk. It was bigger than like a mouse though, but we're up against the door thinking it's like this great beast that's gonna like break through and like eat all of us and blah 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 blah. So when my dad finally gets there, my mom told him what happened. So my dad went out to his truck and he like screwed the whole thing shut. He had screws and he just screwed the whole thing shut and each corner, and he put like a few extra in there to make sure. Then afterwards, he was telling me like, you can't do that, this isn't your house, all that stuff. And I was kind of like, secret room. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was just like, oh my gosh, like, oh, so cool. I wonder if there's anything else secret in this house. And it turns out that there was more. So at this point, we were there for like, I don't know, maybe like 2 months, maybe 3. Because I know my mom was trying to register me to go to the school that was in that area. Made friends with the kids on the 2nd floor. They would hang out with Rebecca and I. Sometimes we would just all hang out in the shared stairway hallway thing. When we started hanging out in like the staired hallway thing, we started to notice like these weird carvings on the walls. They look like little kid drawings. So first, thinking of it, there's a place where only kids live, right? Like it's made for people with families. So kid drawings, making up stuff. But they were very, very, very high up. Now, for our stairway, it just went up the whole entire top of the building to like the roof. And there would be kids' drawings up there, like up near the ceiling, up near like the really, really high where you would have to get a ladder to reach. There was no banister for you to climb. Even if you do like the Spider-Man thing up the walls, because it went up so much higher on an angle, you couldn't get up there. And there was kid drawings up there. And sometimes they were there, and other times we couldn't see them. But shortly after everyone noticed the drawings, that's when my dreams started. Now, my mom's side of the family, up until very recently, I thought it was kind of like, I know it sounds kind of mean, but again, because of the mental illness that runs on my mom's side of the family, I kind of took it with a grain of salt. My mom would say that her grandmother, my great-grandmother, she had gone blind at the age of 3, I think it was. She was born in the 1800s, and her caretaker, her nurse, had cleaned her face with a dirty face cloth, and her eyes got infected and they had to be removed. On a side note, Anne Sullivan was one of her teachers, and she knew Helen Keller, and there was photos of them that my grandparents had. So she was a remarkable, she rode camels, she sold candy. Apparently, according to my grandparents, she would be able to like feel everything, like the bumps on the bills were different for like what types of like money it was, and then like the pennies and the dimes and all that, she could feel the difference. Like such a badass woman. It's because of her I have my direct descendants from Anne Hutchinson and Roger Williams. Anyway, but she would tell my mom that once you lose one sense, you gain another. My mom, when we were talking about dreams in the family, and I know I talked about the dreams briefly in my other video, always thought that it came from her. Now, the past 1.5 to 2 years, I was really digging into my ancestry, trying to look into records, because I don't know really anyone on my mom's side of the family. I don't really know anything about them. I don't talk to them. They don't talk to me. I don't have any way of contacting them. I had a few of them on social media and I would try and reach out, but they never answered. So I wanted to know more about where I came from. So I did my own digging. I've even done the DNA stuff to try and back it up, because I was there was so many stories, you know what I mean? And I wanted to make sure it was something that I could trust as much as I can. And it turns out that on my grandfather's side, where my great-grandmother, my mom's grandmother, was from, we are descended from the Hazard family located in Rhode Island. More specifically, Joseph Peace Hazard. Now, Joseph Peace Hazard was like a renowned and like a very famous spiritualist in Rhode Island. You can Google his information from any state and you'll see everything about him. He had once upon a time been close with like the Fox sisters because he was alive during that time. Then he wasn't close with them anymore, but he documented everything, like all of his interactions with them, with other spiritualists that he went to go see. He traveled the world speaking and talking with mediums and other spiritualists, and he documented everything about his life, especially with his watch ringing. Like if you look into him, I'm sure you'll find those stories of his watch ringing, which was like his signs. He is known primarily for 3 specific things. 1, the seance tower that he built. He built a giant seance tower, which he would go up and do seances to conduct to try and speak with his mom, who he was very close with. The witch's altar that he built, and most famously, which is now sadly no longer public access because it's privately owned, Druid's Dream. Druid's Dream is a house that he built from getting the exact blueprints from a dream he had in which a druid came to visit him. And he started documenting everything with all of his dreams because he would have a lot of dreams that would end up coming true. Again, all of his stuff is public record. If you Google him, you could see everything because he was like a huge part of Rhode Island, apparently. Which is really cool, but also makes me feel like I'm doing nothing with my life because, you know, these are all the people that I'm related to that did all these cool, great, amazing fighting for things, and it feels like I've done nothing. But in one of his entries, he was talking about the druid that repeatedly would come to him in his dreams, and that's how he would know that those were the dreams that were going to come true. And he said he had to document everything because one day there'll be a future ancestor of his that needs to hear it and needs to see everything that he has worked with. And like, that is pretty cool. Like, you know, it could be coincidence, it could be whatever, but still, like, just seeing that with everything that my family had talked about for dreams for so long when I was little was just kind of like, the room felt like it was spinning. Like, it was just kind of like, I feel like such a piece of crap now because it was so hard to tell the difference so much when you were so young. So like now I have to dissect everything. So I just found that out recently. So insanely freaking cool. But if you look in his records, he has like spiritualist brochures and stuff like that, like how he would conduct the seances, like all this stuff. And then he went into like all these rabbit holes and like debunking and looking into other cases of spirits and whatnot, like knocking ghosts and seances and all of his things. This is like before Google and stuff like that. So he went and talked to the people and looked through their historical records and then left it all public. So cool. So freaking cool. Amazing dude. He is a great uncle. I think he's an uncle or a cousin. I have to double check. But anyway, I know I already talked about the dreams in the other video, but this is when the dreams started to happen for me, was in this house. Now, the dreams that I had in this house are not the same type of dreams that I have now. In this house, it started off as these 2 little girls would come in through my bedroom, would go out my bedroom window. But the house was set up different. It was like, looked different. And there was one that had strawberry blonde hair, like that reddish color. And then the other one was just blonde. And they had these dolls with them. And they would have like these night dresses. And they would go out through the window. But then only one girl kept coming back. The girl with the strawberry blonde hair. She would be the only one that would come back. And I would just have like those quick, like split second dreams, you know what I mean? Where you just kind of remember like, oh, this, and then this happened. And I couldn't remember anything else. And I just started having those like every single night. Same thing. Nothing freaky happened. Nothing weird. I wasn't interacting with them. Nothing. That was the dream. When this was happening, as I got closer to like the school year, I remember I was like, I'm going to find more secret passages in the house. So I had gone out through the back door by the kitchen. And this is the thing that like freaks me out years later, like thinking about stuff. Because this is something that really cemented it in my head, like maybe all this really was real, like real. So I had gone out through like the back door and I just had my arm on the wall, like my hand on the wall as I'm going down the stairs, and my finger got stuck with like a bump. So I was kind of like, oh, what is that? So I went back and I was like pushing on it. There was a door in like the top part of the wall, like above the banister, like closer to the ceiling, but it was painted over. So like, you know, when you paint over something and it gets stuck and you can't really see it, I'm just like pushing on it, trying to break the paint. And then the paint just finally like kind of breaks and it just opens. So I just jumped onto the banister, well, 1 foot onto the window ledge onto the banister, and I would just like bolt myself in there. It was just like a little storage cubby hole. It wasn't like a secret room. It was just like storage. And I used to go in there and just kind of hang out from time to time. And one day I'm in there and I'm laying there and I have the door just about shut, but it's just open, just like a crack, just so like if my mom called me, I could hear her and I could just still see out. And the kitchen door opens and my mom comes out. She doesn't see me. She doesn't know I'm there. And she starts looking above that landing spot and there's like an attic, like a crawl space push-up, attic thing. And she's just staring at it for the longest time. Still watching her. Again, she does not know that I am there. So then she goes back in. She grabs a chair and she grabs a broom. So she stands on the chair and she takes the broom and she's standing up on it and she's lifting up the broom, looking into the attic crawl space. Then after a while, she just closes it, grabs the chair, just goes back into the kitchen. I remember thinking, I was like, oh, that was weird. Granted, my mom could do some weird things, but I remember just kind of being like, what was that about? It was just like a weird vibe to it. It was different than like other scenarios that would happen with her. Still having the dreams of the girls. After mom opened up the attic, I just remember the dreams started getting longer. So I would be like following them. Now I wouldn't be like one of them. I would just be like following them, like able to see them in the dream, like as third person. And like the other apartments weren't like apartments. It was like part of a house. And they would just go down the stairs and they would go out through the back door. And there was no shed. There was no fence. The tree was still there, but the tree wasn't as big as it was now with me living there. And they would just go out to the woods and then couldn't see what happened. Then again, strawberry blonde hair girl would come back in. But the dreams started to get like a weird vibe to them. They started making me like uneasy. Before it was just a dream that I would have every night, like a reoccurring dream, whatever. But then I don't know, like just something about the vibe kind of made me eerie. And I just kind of remember starting to like be scared of the dream, even though it wasn't like a scary dream. Just be like, am I going to have this again? Am I going to have it again? And I remember one time in the morning, I woke up and my mom was up super duper early and I had woken up early and she was at like the kitchen table and she was just sitting there. And, I was like, hi, Mom. And, she wasn't really saying much. She was just kind of like nodding. And I remember she asked me, like, does this house give you bad dreams? And I didn't tell her about my dreams at all. Like, as far as I know, I wasn't talking in my sleep or anything. But she was like, does this house give you bad dreams? And I was like, why? And then she's like, because this house gives me bad dreams. So then I was kind of like, like what happens in your dreams? And her dreams, I'm starting to get goosebumps just, oof, okay. So I was like, what happens in your dreams? And she was like, in my dreams, she sees a woman and she has like a high collar thing and her hair's up in a beautiful bun. And she's asking my mom to help her find her daughter. I'm getting goosebumps. Oh my gosh. Because like, again, I never told my mom these dreams. Never told my mom these dreams. Okay. And she's like, in these dreams, like she comes to her and tells her to help her find her daughter. My mom kept getting freaked out and didn't want to talk to her. She didn't want to she would try and run from the dream or everything else that she could. She didn't want anything to do with it because the lady freaked her out because my mom said that she knew she was dead. So, but my mom was telling me, again, this made no impact on me as a kid. Only as I was older did this really make an impact. But she said, yeah. And she said to prove to me that she was real was to go into the attic and I could find the trunk of her clothes and I could find her dress on the corner. And so she's like, so one day I did that. I looked into the attic and there was her trunk and she was up there and she pointed it out to me. And she said, this is how you know I'm real. But my mom said that, afterwards she was just too freaked out by it. And then she just, that was the one and only time she looked in the attic. I still have goosebumps. If you don't remember, like I said, my mom did suffer from schizophrenia. There is something that happens that's called like folie douce, or called shared paranoia or shared psychosis, where someone who does not have any mental health conditions. I do not have schizophrenia. I do not have any of the same illnesses she does. I constantly get testing done for everything that my mom had and everything that could go along with it because I love my mind and I love my brain and I want nothing to, I don't want to lose that. And most times it is genetic. So I constantly get tested for that. I do not have that. Did not obviously have it as a kid. But when, thinking about this when I got older, a little bit older, is when someone who does have a psychosis, a type of psychosis, they can give their symptoms to someone else who does not have any of the same conditions that they are. And they could have a shared experience. It's very popular in Hauntings. So again, I talked about it in that other video. So I was just kind of like for a while thinking that like none of that was real. My mom was going through a tough time. Like we manifested this haunted house together, you know, and for the longest time, that's what I thought it was. But thinking about it, one day it really hit me when she said for the woman to constantly try to prove to my mom that she was real. My mom would have hallucinations. She would have episodes. And a spirit trying to convince my mom that she was real. Like that hit me randomly when I was like talking about it with Amber and stuff like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, wait. And I like had like a full meltdown about it. And I was like, wait, because like even with her situations, she never brought up what was real and what wasn't. She would never say anything like that because she would just have the experience, you know what I mean? And then, you know, be like, that's not there, you know, but I would be doing that when I got older, you know, once I knew I couldn't enable it. Because before as a kid, I would just be scared. I'd be like, where is it? Where's the, you know, where's the monster? Where's the giant spider? Where's like all the puddles that you're seeing? Stuff like that. But like for something like that, that was something that my mom never said during her episodes. And she never said it again during all of her episodes in the future until she passed away. She never mentioned anything like that again with something trying to prove that it's real. And like that's still like the goosebumps on that, the goosebumps, because like, I don't want to take so much time on it, but I'm sure you guys get that, like something wanting help and then trying to prove to my mom that she was real and to show her stuff. And like the stuff was in there. And like, you know, granted, it still could be something where my mom saw it and like I didn't know that she saw it for whatever reason. And it made up a whole entire thing. But it still doesn't explain the part with my dreams. So anyway, my mom was saying like, you know, she was trying to prove to me that she was real. And like, you know, the stuff's all up there. And she's all like, but she can't find her daughter. Her daughter's missing and she doesn't know what happened to her daughter. Her daughter went missing. And I think that's when I started cutting in. And I was like, does her daughter have blonde hair, the one that's missing? And I just remember, I don't know if I cut it in or my mom was alluding to it and I finished it in the sentence. But I remember as soon as I said that, the look that my mom gave me was like a yes, but also like a really scared at the same time. Like it was just like a yes, that's it. But at the same time, like, how do you know that? What's happening? This is freaky. And just like the way her face looked after that. And that's when I told her, I was like, I've been having dreams too, but there's two girls in mine. There's one with strawberry blonde hair, and then there's one with blonde hair. And I just started telling my mom, I was like, they go in and out through my window in the dream, you know, and then only one of them comes back. Like they've been going out through the backyard lately in the dreams, but that's it. I don't know what happens to the other girl. But eventually it would all come to a head. So each time the dreams would progress. Before everything got to a head, the last dream that I had at that point, because it was like in stages. In the dream, you know, they grabbed their dolls, they went out through my window, went to the backyard, and then I could see them go through like all these trees and go by like this creek river thing with like all like these trees growing through it, and like the roots underneath were like all eroded and all this stuff. And it was kind of like, not like steep, but it was like a straight down dirt, like the water like moved everything and eroded, so like you can't really stand on the edge. The water itself wasn't like that deep, but it just was a very narrow type of river bed area. So then afterwards, when I got home from school, I was like walking around. I was like, you know what? I'm going to see if that place is real. So the girl across the street came with me, and I think the boy next door came with me, and I was telling them about my dream. So we hopped the fence from my backyard, cut through a neighbor's backyard because there was someone else who lived over there, and then we went to the woods. I don't know if that woods was part of their property or not, but we went in there, and I knew exactly where I was going. And it looked a little different, but there was still a tree off to the side. There was no shrubs or anything like how it was before. And there was like a dried up creek bed with just like the littlest amount of water going through it. But it was almost exactly the same as my dream. Like it wasn't like a full thing of water anymore. It was still like had some water, and it was still like a few feet down to like jump into it. But like the tree was still over there. It was just kind of like off and kind of like, instead of being like upright like how it used to be, it was like on an angle. There was no shrubs like how it was in the dream. But like that was the spot. And I was telling it to her. I was like, see, I told you it was over here. I told you it was over here. Later on that day, when I got back home, I was deciding to do some laundry, and we had to go into the basement. Now, I don't know, I guess trigger warning for a big scary man. No violence or anything like that, but just I don't know. This apartment complex, the temp houses, were supposed to be for people with families. They were all single moms. I'm not sure if they were supposed to be single moms, but they were all single moms. But Rebecca's mom on the first floor had, a boyfriend. Never met him. Never knew what he looked like. So I'm in the basement, and I'm taking my stuff from the washer, and I have to go down the corridor, like on the side of that room with the table saw in it, to get to where the dryer is. It's not really a corridor, it's just along the side of the room. And everything in there is super noisy. And there's just one pull string light bulb to light the whole entire freaking basement. So I'm putting everything into the dryer, and I'm like, being loud by myself. I'm just in there. So I'm making all these noises, like, like talking and throwing clothes in the dryer and setting up everything. And I feel the wall that I'm up against kind of like vibrate. So I turn on the dryer, and then I have my hand on the wall, and I was like, it's still vibrating. What is that? So then as I go around the corner, I start to hear the noise of the table saw. So I get to the entrance of that room with all the locks on it, and the door is open. It's propped open like this, perfectly. It wasn't all the way flush up against the wall, but it was just open like this. So everything on this side for me is blocked, and I'm coming from this way, so I peek into the room. And I go into the room because the switch was on the outside of the room, the table saw switch was on the outside, so you would think it's a light switch. But I kind of have my hand over there as I'm looking in, and I'm just kind of hello, thinking maybe one of the kids from the second floor is in there, maybe Rebecca's in there, or if there's someone else that's in there, you know what I mean? In the dock with the freaking table saw, they shouldn't be in there. And as I'm doing that, I just feel two huge hands push me by my back into the room. And then the door slams behind me, and I hear all the locks go, and I start hearing a man laughing. So it was a split second of I don't know where to move, because that room is so tiny. There's only one window that's not even a real window. It's a confession window that you could barely see out of, and everything's echoing. I don't know where the table saw is, and it takes a second for everything to register. And then after the last lock goes, because he did all of them as he's laughing, that's when I start screaming, because it took a second, and I was just kind of silence, even though it wasn't silent. And that's when I just started screaming, and I felt like I couldn't catch my breath, and I felt like I was going to pass out from fear. I don't know if you've ever been so scared where it feels like you're literally going to die of fear. That's what it felt like. I've never been that scared ever since then. But he just started banging on the door, and then he stopped for a little bit, and then he started banging on the confession window, and he's just I got you. And all I could see was his eyes. His eyes were messed up. They were yellowy, he was on something. And he just kept banging on the door. He wouldn't let me out. He didn't do anything to me. But he just kept banging on the door repeatedly. And I couldn't move. I would just go from underneath, where the confession window was, hugging the wall. And then just try and get at the door again. And I lost my voice. And I was just crying and screaming the whole entire time. I don't know how long I was in there for. But after a while, because he would just come down and randomly just start banging on the door again and just banging on it. And after a while, I hear someone kind of at the washer, just noises, the thing going up, and the soft sound of clothes and stuff like that. And I have no voice, so I'm just kind of but I'm banging at the door, and I hear someone yelp, and then the door locks open, and I just see Rebecca's face for the splittest of seconds, and her being scared but then surprised. I pushed her so freaking hard. And I just ran all the way up the stairs. I didn't even say a single freaking word to her. I just literally pushed her as hard as I could, and I ran up the stairs. And when I got home, my mom wasn't even home. I still don't know where she was. I fell asleep on the couch in the living room. I don't know where she was. I don't know. Maybe she came home when I was sleeping, but I waited and I waited, because it was already nighttime by the time I got out, and I don't know where she was. But when I slept in the living room, I didn't have any dreams. Not that I can remember. Maybe because of everything with the basement thing, just messed me up. But I remember in the morning when I was telling her about it, she just kept saying it didn't happen. Oh, it didn't happen. She was home all day and it didn't happen. I was trying to tell her, and she didn't believe me. Obviously, Rebecca believed me, But I didn't want to leave the apartment after that because I got so freaked out, and I didn't want to go anywhere at all. Like, I hated being in my room, but I didn't want to leave our house section to go to my other cubby hole that I would hang out in, because I didn't want to go anywhere that couldn't lock, that I couldn't unlock with whoever that man was, which I'm 99.99% positive that it was Rebecca's mom's boyfriend on something because of what ended up happening afterwards. But on the last night we were there, I had the most intense dream of that house, of the girls. This video is so long. I'm so sorry. There's probably going to be so many edits, so hopefully this all makes sense. In the dream, I saw the two girls. They got up. They went to the same spot. They were playing by their dolls by the river. They went through the whole entire spiel. Then, all of a sudden, I could see like I was the blonde-haired girl in the dream. And my doll, I was playing with it with my sister. She hit my doll with her doll, and mine fell into the river. So I went down to try and grab it, but the ground underneath me crumbled. Now, the river wasn't deep. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't deep where it's like, I'm taken away by the current or something along those lines. But when I fell, my hair got stuck in the roots of the tree, and I was like just below the surface of the water, and I felt the sensation of like trying to get the breath up and like, taking a gasp in from falling, but breathing in water, but knowing I can't open my mouth anymore, and trying to get my hair free and trying to dig my elbows in and like stick my head up and trying to get everything free and just ripping out my own hair, trying to get out from underneath all the branches. And through like all the ripples of me like making the water move, I see the redhead girl with her doll just go to the edge, and she's just staring down looking at me. And she didn't help me or move or anything. She might have been scared. I don't know. I have no idea. But when I woke up, I felt like I saw the little redhead girl on top of me and choking me. Now, there is sleep paralysis. You know what I mean? You see things when you wake up, like hypnagogic and hypnopompic states. You see things when you wake up. So it could be something like that. But I was screaming and trying to scream. I was making like those raspy like noises and just kicking at everything because the ceiling was all like slanted. So like the ceiling was right there. So I'm banging on everything that I can. And my mom threw open my door. And I remember just seeing her in the doorway, just looking like scared from the light of the window coming just like across one half of her face, and her just being like in shock, and her rushing over to me and like, me crying and all this stuff and like freaking out. And then I just remember her saying there was a girl on top of you. And again, with her, it's so hard to find out what's real and what's not. That's why I struggle with this stuff, because she was saying she saw a little girl on top of me. And like when I woke up, like through the dark in the other half of that window coming in, because the street light was on the other side, it looked like she was on top of me choking me. And like, again, I just had a weird dream, a bad dream. I don't know. Like, I don't know what to make of that part. Like, because I can't find a reason for that to make sense, or maybe my kid mind like warped it a little bit. But that day after I woke up, because I slept with my mom in her room after that, and then when we woke up, the social worker came that day and they evicted everybody because they found needles in the trash. So that was our last night that we were there. And that was the night that I had that dream. That's why I think the guy who locked me in the basement was on something, because, kind of makes sense, I guess, with everything and how he was acting. But you might be wondering, well, how does any of this have to do with Oneiric and dream magic? Because it just sounded like I trauma dumped on you guys. I'm so sorry. Let me pull back some of that energy so you guys don't feel that. Oh, let me take that back. That was to explain the basis for everything. Now, for a long time, I would start to have dreams after that house and not really pay attention to them. They would just be random little snippets of dreams that you couldn't fully remember. I already could start to lucid dream by my mid-teens. When you lucid dream, you could change the direction of a dream. You can leave a dream if you're having a bad dream. You can change the outcome. You can leave through a door, through a window, or you can make one happen. You can, make yourself ride a dinosaur if you want. But I would be able to lucid dream by my mid-teens, which is really cool sometimes. But little things would happen in my day-to-day that I wouldn't really be paying attention to, and it would feel like deja vu, and I'll be like, oh, that's weird, I had this in a dream. So first, I was kind of chalking it up to, if you have like a generic type dream and then a generic type thing happens, you're going to automatically link the two. Like all of a sudden, if you dream about a fire and then a few weeks later there's a fire, fires are very common, wildfires are very sadly common, or like a sinking, or like an accident, those are kind of commonplace enough, as much as it sucks to say that, where like if you have a dream, there's a very higher odds of that happening, and then you could be like, oh my gosh, I'm psychic, I had a dream that this is going to happen, and it happened. Oh, so I would chalk those up to something like that, being like, oh, it's a very commonplace dream. Then about 11, maybe 10 years ago, I was talking about this haunted house. And that's when I was like starting to be like, oh my gosh, everything with my mom, because that's like when my mom had passed away, 10 years ago. And she had gotten sick 2 years before she had passed. And that's when I really had gotten back into contact with her. And then she passed away. But I was like talking about that type of stuff with a bunch of people, and talking about the house and like all these weird experiences. When I was talking about it more and kind of revisiting it, the dream started happening again. And I was kind of like, oh, subconscious thing. I'm thinking about a house that I had bad dreams in, so it's going to make sense that I'm having bad dreams now and these weird dreams. I started just telling my boyfriend at the time some of my dreams, just being like, oh, this was the dream that I had. It's really weird because it's in the basement of that house. That could be for a trauma reason. Like it was something very traumatic happened in that basement, So to me, that makes sense. I couldn't get out of the basement. It was really weird. I couldn't go out and explore the house. I couldn't change the dream. I had to watch this thing happen. And it started off with like little things like that. And he's like, oh, that's interesting. And I would try to remember every detail as I could and, write it down, or either tell it to him or do a voice memo to myself. That way I have all the details. I have the date and the time. When they started happening, they were happening within like the time frame that it seemed like it was happening in the dream. Like I was like, oh, this was like during this season. This was during this. And this happened, but this was this color and this was that color. And when they started to happen exactly like they were in the dream. Still could be a coincidence, right? Like that's still a coincidence, because I was still very iffy on what my mom was saying with like the dream stuff on our side of the family. Then they started happening more and more, and I noticed that like I could have nightmares and dreams about the house, but once I was in the basement, I could not get out. It was like in real life, like how when I was trapped in the basement, I couldn't open the door because of all the locks that locked from the outside. So I'm like, oh, it's me working through my trauma with that, because that sucked. I didn't know what was going to happen to me. It felt like I was going to be killed. So like that makes sense. All these bad dreams in these basements, and probably why I can't get out of it. But when I'm in the basement of that house, I have to watch the dream play out. And if the dream happens in the basement of the nightmare house, those are the dreams that come true following every detail, like a chain of events. And that's when it gets weird. It gets freaky, because like, you could have a general dream and you could be like, oh, but I was wearing blue and, like this happened. It was like something. Have you ever seen Groundhog Day? Where, he's lived the day so many times, he's able to predict when everything happens. That's what it's like when these dreams happen. After I made the correlation of like, once I'm in the basement, I can't get out. And it's when I'm in the basement, those are the dreams that come true. That's when I was like, okay, let me work with this a little bit more. Maybe I can control it. Maybe it's a trauma response. Maybe it's me working through these things, or maybe it's something else. Maybe it's, spirit communication or whatever it is, but I just want to be able to figure it out so I know one way or another. It means a lot to me to make sure that like my reality is real to me. So I started writing everything down. I started practicing like the method of Loki, the mind palace, to work on like astral projection, all this type of stuff, thinking that it could help with the dreams. In my dreams, since I was able to lucid dream and then figure out like everything with the tether for astral projection, blah, 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 all that type of stuff, then I could go to this certain place and I could work magic in my dreams. I could do spell work in my dreams. I could check up on other people in my dreams. Really cool. It's a lot of fun. I love it. It's really cool. The only thing is when everything changes and then I'm forced into the basement. Now, these dreams that happen in the basement is dream claustrophobia. Now, the only time I ever get sleep paralysis is once in a while, but I get it in my dreams when I'm sleeping. It never happens in the nightmare house, though. It happens like in random dreams. I'll get sleep paralysis in the dream where I can't move. I don't wake up during it. It's in the dream. Everything that happens in the nightmare house isn't like, whatever you think of, it's something that's called dream claustrophobia. That is when you're dreaming, you are aware you are dreaming, you are aware of where you are, but you are also aware that you cannot wake yourself up. No matter how much you try, no matter what you do, you cannot get yourself to wake up, even though you know it's a dream. And if for someone that I don't want to say mastered lucid dreaming, because you never fully get to be a master, but who can lucid dream very well, knowing that all of a sudden I can't change my dreams and I know I'm dreaming and you're feeling trapped and you're feeling stuck is the scariest feeling ever. It's more scary. Sometimes it's more scary than the actual nightmare of what plays out, what happened. And I hate that feeling. Now, throughout the years, I've kept tally of all these dreams that I've had because they are very, very specific. What sucks is they're all bad dreams. Sometimes they're to complete strangers, which to me doesn't make sense. I don't see a point in it because I can't do anything about it. And one was one that I was telling my therapist about because I was telling her about the dreams because again, it was something that freaked me out with everything with my mom's psychosis. And she was telling me, write them all down. When you have a dream, tell me. So I told her the dream. And in this dream, there was a in the dream and a place got shot up, and it was from the perspective I was in the basement, I got locked in, I could not get out, and I was screaming. I was I don't want to see what's going to happen, please, please, please. And then when I'm in the basement, the room shifts to whatever is going to happen, and then I'm watching it. But this one, I was from the perspective of a man who'd gotten shot in the chest, and I saw the man who shot me. And the first way that I had described him was an older emo guy, but then I went into the detail of his clothes, of what he was wearing, what he drove away in, and everything else, and what the building looked like the way the landing was and the stairs and the way that the glass was shut off from the side from the, and then the way that the carpet seemed to either be filled with blood or the shadow from everything, but it seemed to be blue. So it seemed like there was people off to the side of the right of it. And again, very, very specific for everything. And I shared it with my therapist. It was a day or two later, I think, or it was even later on that day that I found out that it was everything that matched my thing for the building. It was in a medical building. It wasn't the United thing or anything like that, but it was in a medical building, and it was somewhere Midwest. And the way that the glass shattered and everything with the news person standing out there, the surveillance of the van that I described, and I told my therapist the description of the man who shot me and what he looked like. It took a while, but then they finally found the guy that did the and he perfectly matched my description down to the hair color, the length of the hair, the way I kind of did his face with my hands, and the type of clothes that he was wearing and everything. So after I did that, that's when my therapist was like, "Ooh, you should do some dream studies." But the thing is, I can't predict when it's going to happen. I don't know when it's going to happen. It's not something that you can work with and that you can control. And it sucks. It sucks a lot because you never know when it's going to happen and you don't know what you're going to see. It's not I could call on it to work in my favor, or if I want to know if someone I love and I care about is going to be okay or not. I can't just make the dream happen. So it makes it really hard to do a study unless they're able to somehow do something with me, if I don't have a dream like that. I don't know. But they are so specific in everything. And I write down as much as I can remember, and everything is still vivid. And I write down the date and the time, or I do a text to myself, or I do a voice memo. And all the ones that I've had in the basement of the nightmare house, because I'll have dreams in my nightmare house and I'll still tell people, but I'll just be like, I had a nightmare house dream. So I let them know. The basement nightmare house dreams are the ones that always come true. It's weird stuff too. Other people talk about I shouldn't know, unless maybe it's a subconscious thing, or they talked about it somewhere else. It might have gotten lost in my subconscious stuff, because sometimes conversations are other things that would never mention to me personally or my immediate area. But hey, I had this dream about X, Y, and Z, and they'll be like, did I tell you about that? And I'll be like, I don't know what this means, but I just had this dream about this. So I don't know. I don't know. Been going on for a very long time. When I do my dream magic, I currently have a spell going right now. You might have seen it in my other videos. The dreams started coming way more frequently, and it was really affecting me. I did this spell to try and block everything. Now, there was one dream that I had that I could not get in. I mentioned it in the video with Martina, and I could see into the basement of the nightmare house, and I could see everything play out. So it seemed like no matter what, I had to know that dream. And I had that dream the morning before the bad thing happened. And I had no idea that the bad thing happened until months later, when I had reached out to a mutual friend, and then they had let me know. So part of me is wondering if I should dismantle that and kind of see what's going on, because I have dreams still where I'm going to the nightmare house and there's knocking all around it, but I can't get into it. It makes me feel better because I know that my spell's working. But I'm like, if there's something that I need to know, that I could still find a way of finding out, like I said with that other dream. But recently I found out that my friends moved into that same apartment, which is also kind of when those dreams started spiking up again. So that could be maybe part of it too. I don't know. But they started having experiences, and they did not know that I lived there. One of them were telling their younger sister, and they were like, don't you remember before Crystal lived here? And she had the same exact experiences that you guys are having now. And they didn't remember, or they didn't even know. And that's when they had reached out to me and be like, did you live at blah, 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 blah? And I was like, yes. Why? And they're like, this is where we live now. And this is what's happening. And you're like, you could come here whenever you want and investigate. Get back. I kind of want to go with someone else, and someone who doesn't know me, just in case, because if I'm in it, that place has so many weird memories for me. I'm probably going to be all over the place and not be especially if I had to go into that basement, and someone who doesn't know me at all or know the story of my house, the nightmare house. So I don't know. I really don't know. This was more of a story of the nightmare house than like how I work with Oneiric magic, but it kind of forced me to look into other stuff that you could do with the dreams, like the astral projection, the doing spells in my sleep, being able to, check up on people. That's why I have like different dream dolls. I also have like a nighttime servitor that I work with that goes into mirrors, that works with mirrors. Again, this is going to sound crazy unless you're a witch, to like check up on my friends when they're sleeping again, because these nightmares have freaked me out, because I have had nightmares about them. They've all been okay, but they were still terrifying dreams, like being involved in horrendous car accidents, being trapped, watch someone else get hurt. Like, that sucks, So I want to make sure that everybody's okay. This was a super duper long-winded video, and I don't know how to end it because this is already so long, and I don't know if this was interesting, and it's very awkward to talk about, and I ramble because I'm just kind of like, there's so much to it. My biggest dilemma now is undoing my spell, if I'm going to do that, and maybe going back to this house. I might film it if I go back, just so it's someone else's perspective, just not my own. Maybe I'll keep it private. I don't know. There's just so much different things that happen there. For the longest time, I was just kind of like, had to be shared psychosis, delusions. I was scared of a window. My mind made up this other thing, but then like, there's so many other things that don't make sense. And then everything with the dreams too. I really don't know. Because then after my mom had passed away, that's when like, we were already talking about it. Then the dreams started coming like way stronger than they ever were before. Like so vivid, so strong. And then when my friends had moved into that house, which I didn't know they were moving into it at the time, those dreams were coming in like twice a week. I don't know. And I have the names of the two girls too. I don't know if that's their real names or if it's like what my little kid brain made up for them. I don't know. But I have names. So that's why, again, I want to come with someone who doesn't like know me or anything like that, or know anything about, like, I don't know how many people I told about the nightmare house though too, but still. So maybe I could go with people who do know me but don't know anything about the house, maybe. But I have two names. I almost said very specific names. They kind of are generic but kind of aren't, for the two girls. So again, I don't know if those are their real names or not, but we shall see. Let me know, what do you guys think? Anyway, take back this energy. I want to know what you guys think. Like should I do something like that? Because again, I'm in my own box. I'm not going to be looking at all different sides. I'm only going to be looking at it from my perspective. So I'd love to hear your perspectives of it. Again, I know it's something that I cannot control. I know it's something that I cannot harness or work with in a certain way. It can only be when it's time for me to see something. So it's something along those lines. So it's not something that like I can master, I can control and call upon when need be. Nothing like that, I'm in my 30s now, and it's been a very long time I've been having these dreams. Anyway, all right. Let me know what you think. I'm rambling for far too long. I really hope you guys are having a good day, and I'm sorry if that was kind of heavy and kind of weird. I just really want to know what you guys think. Let me know down below. I might make new dream pillows and new poppets and stuff, because again, I use that for when I do like dream temple workings, or trying to have prophet type of dreams that are different than my nightmare house type of dreams. So let me know if you guys want anything on that, and I could actually go into more detail about the Oneiric magic stuff versus just the nightmare house, because I feel like the title might be misleading. Anyway, I hope you guys are having a wonderful day, night, energy, space, whatever time it is that it may be when you are watching this. And I really, truly hope that good things happen to you. Sweet dreams. Ooh.